Stolen Hyundais and Kias being used in violent crimes. It's a problem so serious that a local police department has now issued an urgent warning. As we first showed you last time on the Spotlight, these TikTok Kia boys learned how to steal the vehicles from hack videos on the social media site. It turns out the skyrocketing trend in thefts here is much more dangerous than we first reported. So much so that local leaders are taking dramatic steps to try to stop it. So good evening and thank you for joining us for the Spotlight. I'm David Rose. The number of Kias and Hyundais stolen in Tacoma and Seattle since the start of this year jumped a staggering 1,500% compared to last winter. But while the hotwire how-tos may have surfaced on TikTok, the real problem is built into the cars themselves. At least that's the claim from the Seattle City Attorney, who filed suit against the automakers. But are these companies to blame for other people's criminal acts? The Spotlight's Nia Wong has more on this first in the state lawsuit.
Last July to this July, a 620% increase in the amount of Kia and Hyundais stolen in the city of Seattle.
Seattle City Attorney Ann Davison says enough is enough. The lawsuit accuses Kia and Hyundai of endangering the public safety of the entire Seattle community by not installing engine immobilizers in many of their vehicles and not issuing recalls for their older models that lack this device.
It's becoming a public nuisance because they know that they have chosen to cut corners and exclude anti-theft technology, which is universal in almost all auto manufacturers.
Citywide motor vehicle theft has reached a 15-year high in 2022. The lawsuit says Hyundais and Kias were among the top 10 stolen vehicles in Seattle. Data obtained from SPD shows a rapid increase of these thefts starting in July, coinciding with popular how-to videos on TikTok.
I see they tried to steal my Kia, bro. They out here on that, man.
We reached out to both car companies. Hyundai is calling the lawsuit unnecessary and improper, claiming they've taken steps in response to a rise in thefts of their cars, including wheel locks to law enforcement and standardizing immobilizers in all their vehicles starting in late 2021. Kia also says it's provided wheel locks, and their 2022 models and trims have an immobilizer applied at the beginning of the year or as a running change. However, the lawsuit says wheel locks aren't effective, and these companies also need to address older models that don't have immobilizers.
The important push is to get that recall so that all those vehicles can be fixed and put this anti-theft technology in those vehicles for those consumers.
At the very least, these drivers who own those stolen Kias and Hyundais are stuck paying up to $1,000 in some cases for their insurance deductible to get it fixed. One telling the Spotlight that she was left without a vehicle, had to get a loan to cover the balance still owed after an insurance payoff. And that's not to mention the time spent, the stress, the frustration of having to deal with being a victim of these TikTok Kia boys.
There's anger, there's frustration.
My heart dropped.
What do I do now? How am I going to get to work? How am I going to get to doctor's appointments?
It really made me feel insecure in my community, honestly.
Christian Matter and Summer Turnberg, two of the hundreds of victims living in Tacoma who have had their Kias vandalized or stolen. It happened not once, but twice to Christian.
It was stolen once in November, and then they turned around and stole it less than a month later for the second time from the hospital parking lot. Here I am on Christmas morning, finding out that my car's gone, and I'm laying it up in a hospital bed, and it's just like, okay, can this year get any worse?
Summer was in the movie when she got an urgent phone call after her car alarm went off.
They broke through my back driver's side window and then broke my ignition column.
The thieves were trying to use a USB cable to steal her car, just like so many TikTok videos have shown.
You don't need a key, bro.
It's absurd to me that there's a step-by-step tutorial on how to break into people's cars.
Summer is still beating herself up about the break-in.
I saw the posts on social media about the Kias being stolen in the area, and I had all the intentions in the world to get ahead of it and buy a club, but it was just the time that I didn't have that. And so I knew that it was a possibility, but knowing that it happened to me still sunk my heart.
Surveillance video from her apartment complex showed 14 suspects loitering around her car before one of them broke the window, then destroyed the ignition.
And I think the fact that they appeared to be younger really shows that this generation is being targeted with information that can really harm them in the future. I don't know what's going to happen to them justice-wise.
Summer needs her car to commute to Seattle, where she works to help cancer patients.
It makes you feel really vulnerable to see your personal property get broken into. It's always something that you know might happen, but that car was my first big investment when I was finishing college. So it meant a lot to me.
The theft has also been a big blow for Christian and his Kia.
Trashed. You know, they pretty much just tore the whole dash apart. The whole steering column was torn apart. There was drug residue all over the inside of the car. I found beer cans all over the place. I mean, it was a mess.
A mess he can't afford to clean up.
You know, when you get to a point where, man, I only have a few more dollars left in my pocket, what am I going to do to get to all these doctor's appointments and to work? And, you know, you get really concerned.
Now, Christian has to use public transportation to get where he needs to go.
Now, I worked really hard for it. I've been making all my payments on it for like the last year, and now I don't have it. And I don't have a way to get it back.
He's keeping his head held high, but it's a struggle.
Makes you feel a little defeated at times because, you know, and I'm reminded by it every time I get on the bus. Yeah, man, I got to walk to the bus stop in the middle of winter with like 30-degree weather. This sucks.
When we come back, pursuing the truth when it comes to police chases. Someone's numbers aren't adding up in Olympia, and lives may depend on getting the math right. Get out of the car! Stop! The issue of police pursuits have been front and center ever since the law changed in 2021, restricting officers from chasing many suspects. They now have to have probable cause instead of reasonable suspicion that someone committed a crime in order to pursue them. Well, since then, the law enforcement community and some mayors across Washington state have been on a full campaign to reverse the law, saying the changes have emboldened criminals, especially when it comes to those stealing cars. Just last year, more than 45,000 cars or trucks were stolen, and that is a huge increase. Police say it's directly related to the restrictions on police pursuits. This year, they were hoping lawmakers would come back to the table, have a discussion, and tweak the law so it's more balanced in their eyes. But the discussion has now turned into political dynamite, with accusations flying over bad data. A lot of fingers are pointing at Senator Manka Dhingra, the chair of the Law and Justice Committee, who's been refusing to bring the bipartisan issue into her committee to even have a discussion. The Spotlight's Hannah Kim pressed her on that.
I know it's a bipartisan effort. Many lawmakers at least want to talk about it. You hold a lot of power right now. You chair the committee there. Why not even bring it up for a discussion in your committee? Why not let it be on the table?
So we do have a bill that's been dropped by Senator Lovick regarding high-speed chases. And to me, it always is about making sure you can articulate the problem you're trying to solve. And here we've had two competing interests, right? When we passed the bill, the interest or the problem we were trying to solve is the fact that 50% of the individuals that were being killed in high-speed chases were innocent bystanders or passengers. That was the problem we were trying to solve.
You heard Senator Dhingra bring up Senator Lovick's proposal, Senate Bill 5533. That bill is only about bringing together a working group to discuss police pursuits. It will not address the crux of the issue, which is reasonable suspicion versus probable cause. Democrats pride themselves on data-driven decision-making. So why is Senator Dhingra so sure that the reform police pursuit rules should stay in place? The data she's using has now come under harsh criticism after it was reviewed by Dr. Matthew Hickman, the chair of the Department of Criminal Justice at Seattle University. More now from the Spotlight's Matthew Smith.
I will tell you that protecting innocent Washingtonians is always going to be a very high priority.
She's putting a premium on a new study from UW, a study that says since laws surrounding high-speed chases were changed, we've seen 3 people die in police pursuits compared to 11 in that same time frame prior. But that study's under fire. A CLU professor was commissioned to review the study, writing, quote, "If this analysis was submitted for peer review, it would be summarily rejected as it does not satisfy threshold criteria for quantitative scientific work. The analysis should be disregarded in its entirety." In fact, we found 2 deaths listed that were killed by a chase, though when we dug into our Fox 13 archives, we found investigators said they called off a chase.
Motorcycle that outruns our police cars and everything, so we don't chase.
We need to fix this.
Steve Strand with the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs says the bill needs to be heard. He's hoping this latest news allows that to happen.
We're talking about lives. Now, I know that holes have been poked in the study. If these changes have saved lives, is it worth taking a step back and saying, how can we save those lives?
Yeah. The fact is, nobody wants pursuits that place anyone in danger. I think everyone agrees on that. We also need to have the prospect or the possibility of law enforcement engaging in a pursuit to begin to shift that element of criminals acting with impunities.
And we have since learned that fellow Democrat Alicia Rule warned Senator Dingra that the data she was relying on was bad before Dingra used that data during media interviews. In fact, it was Rule herself who commissioned the new study refuting the UW professor's report. Dingra's response now? Her office says the new numbers actually prove their point, saying it shows better data is needed. But they need to make decisions on the best data they have. But is there better data already out there? The Spotlight's continued search for answers resulted in a new statement from the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. And with it, some new numbers that could flip this debate on its head. It turns out the Washington State Patrol has been tracking what it calls fleds, suspects who could have been chased along with actual pursuits. According to the WSP, actual pursuits did decrease with the reform laws, down to 501 in 2022. But an additional 3,110 drivers fled and were not pursued. That's a more than 300% increase since the changes went into effect. Given all that info, what can you do if you feel changes are needed? Well, you can email Senator Dingra at manka.dingra@leg.wa.gov or call her office in Olympia. That number is 360-786-7672. Up next, major changes coming soon to a court near you. King County's new prosecutor is shaking up her office's approach to crime. What are the top priorities for King County's newest prosecutor? Lisa Mannion is laying out some of her plans, including a brand new division. Mannion says she's looking to bring innovation, new leadership, and additional training to people who work in the prosecutor's office. And this includes the new unit to stop gun violence. Mannion says, like every other big county in the United States, King County has seen a rapid increase in shootings. According to data from the King County Sheriff's Office, in 2021, shootings were up 54%.
The purpose of this new unit is to decrease gun violence in our community with a twofold approach: identifying and prosecuting the individuals causing the most harm in our communities, and connecting individuals who are close to gun violence to community-based resources before they become victims or perpetrators of violence.
The gun violence unit is not the only new team Mannion is bringing to the county. She's also creating a division that will focus on the prosecution of suspects involved in gender-based crimes. Mannion says women of color and people in the LGBTQ+ community are the ones who often face these targeted crimes the most. This includes cases of rape and domestic violence.
I do believe that these changes will increase the prosecution of rapes and sexual assaults and other sexual violence, because we know that those cases do present some serious challenges, and they require and deserve a focused emphasis.
Well, questions were asked about the county's case backlog. Mannion says they're at about 4,000 cases because of the pandemic, and they are prioritizing violent crime, sexual assault, and repeat property crime. It's not just the prosecutors dealing with the backlog. Law enforcement agencies are still working to solve cases from last year, especially if it involves a violent crime like the one you're about to see in this Spotlight exclusive. Detectives want you to look closely at this video to see if you know that guy in the green shorts who walks with the limp. Police say witnesses identified him as the suspect who shot a man in the parking lot of a sports bar last August. When he left the bar that night, he walked out with the man you see there in the gray sweats. Detectives also want to talk to him. When the two got outside, witnesses told police the suspect inserted himself into an argument that he overheard between a brother and sister who he didn't know. Listen as you hear a woman's voice and then the gunshot. The victim was shot in the stomach. The suspect then got into a white Dodge Charger and drove off. You can hear it as it leaves the parking lot. The victim who was shot survived. He tells the Spotlight he hopes somebody can identify the suspect for Kent Police. If you have any information, please submit a tip to Crime Stoppers of Puget Sound. You can text the information through the P3 Tips app on your cell phone or call 1-800-222-TIPS. It is anonymous. And Crime Stoppers is offering a cash reward of up to $1,000 for any information that leads to an arrest in this case. King County prosecutors say there is usually one robbery case charged every day. And looking at the data from the last 5 months of 2022, there were 37 robbery cases in December, but that's down from a high of 47 in August. And that total includes a takeover-style armed robbery that deputies are hoping that you can solve. Detectives are still working to identify the gunman who terrorized the customers and staff at Gooby's Doobies in Maple Valley last summer. The King County Sheriff's Office sent the spotlight a new angle of the surveillance video showing the two suspects strolling into the store. 3 customers were waiting to check out. The guy you see in the gray jacket who goes over to lock the door has already been arrested. His name is Joseph Kessler, and he's in the King County Jail. But detectives need your help to identify his partner in crime. The video shows the gunman pull his weapon out of his pants. A customer bolts for the door to escape, and he goes after him, pointing the gun at that guy, who drops to the ground with his hands up. Even though he's wearing a mask, that gunman keeps pulling up his sweatshirt to hide his face. The suspect then orders the customers to go behind the counter. He demands their wallets, keys, and phones. The two then took thousands of dollars worth of products and cash before stealing a customer's car. Well, Kessler was arrested in late November, but he has refused to give up the name of his accomplice.
Our biggest concern is that when we have robberies that go unsolved, is that one, that this emboldens suspects to continue to commit additional crimes. One, that since we don't have the suspect in custody, there's also another gun that's outstanding.
Detectives describe that gunman as black, between 25 and 35 years old, wearing a brown and tan hat that had a pattern on it that looks like Gucci or maybe Louis Vuitton. Do you know who this guy is who runs around with Kessler and is robbing these marijuana stores with a gun? Crime Stoppers is going to give you a cash reward of up to $1,000 for that information. Submit a tip to the King County Sheriff's Office or call 1-800-222-TIPS. We get so much good feedback from viewers of the Spotlight, from tips that help solve crimes to gifts for those we've shown in need of help. But tonight, we want to share with you a letter that a teacher who watched our show from earlier this year sent about teen violence. In response to our reporting, she says educators fought for years to help students, but the lack of accountability is leading to ever younger violent offenders. Spotlight's AJ Janabel has more.
Now, this teacher's letter comes as a direct response to the Spotlight's coverage on kids committing crimes. The teacher, who does not want to be named, says what we're seeing now is something that's been growing in the classrooms for decades.
5 teens arrested in Pierce County after a night of criminal mayhem.
I recently watched your special on the increase in youth crime. Sadly, this is something educators saw coming and have been screaming about for years. This is a letter from a woman who says she has taught in the Pierce County area for more than 25 years. She sent it to David Rose following the Spotlight episode on violent kid criminals. In the letter, she mentions a lack of ability to discipline, poor attendance, out-of-control students, and disconnected parents, and police whose hands are tied by new laws.
Might seem like for some of the kids that there is no consequences for their actions, and maybe that's the point that we have to, that us in the schools are working hard to try to prevent.
Sergeant Darren Moss with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department tells me, for the most part, students are not getting into trouble. But for the ones who are,
southbound passing Southeast 58th, looks like his car is smoking really bad. Looks like
seemingly getting worse and worse. And there are new laws preventing quick action. One of them is RCW 1340-740, which prevents investigators from talking to kids without an attorney in reference to a crime. The other is the Blake decision, which decriminalized possession. So now kids don't face the same or any consequences for having illegal drugs, Moss says.
The family's having a tough time making them do anything. And if the school can't do anything and law enforcement can't do anything, I think at that point we are letting kids slip through the cracks.
When we return, finding ways to help heal the whole victim. When it comes to rape cases, more than just the law gets broken. There's a new tool aiming to help survivors of rape. The goal is to help connect them to doctors, legal advisors, and therapy much quicker. The Spotlight's Alejandra Guzman went out to the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center to find out how it works.
It lets a survivor know they're not alone.
A quick QR code scan brings you here. A simple, confidential survey to help victims of rape or those looking for someone they know.
You can press begin here.
Bringing you to the questions a survivor would walk through.
Are you looking for resources because you were sexually assaulted?
The three-step tool has been in the works since the summer of 2022 after health and advocacy providers noticed that people were not being connected to resources immediately after their traumatic experience.
For a lot of survivors in the immediate aftermath of sexual assault, they're overwhelmed. Aren't sure where to go.
The connector tool helps victims access advocacy, therapy, legal, and medical resources.
Would you like information about where to get a free sexual assault forensic exam, which is often called a rape kit?
The tool is available to everyone, and help will be given whether you've reported your incident to police or not. According to CaseArc, out of 1,000 sexual assaults, 975 perpetrators want free. Their data shows out of 310 sexual assaults reported, 50 lead to an arrest, 28 cases will end up in a felony conviction, and only 25 perpetrators will be incarcerated.
So whether or not a survivor reports or their case is assigned or moves through the justice system, we want to ensure that survivors are connected to all of these other resources.
That's all the time we have on this edition of The Spotlight. Until next week, be smart and stay safe.